Hey guys, and welcome to PowerPoint number 12. This is talking about the French and Indian War, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, and the Townshend Acts. So we're where we left off with right before our break was that there had been the French and Indian War, and now the French had been ran out of pretty much most of North America, and the British and the Spanish now controlled majority of what would be North America. And so we're learning the after effects of that. There was the Proclamation of 1763 that said that nobody could settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. So now the English colonies are having to make sure that that's not happening, along with the British government. So as more and more colonists think about moving west, because now that land is controlled by them, problems are going to start arising. All right, so the French and Indian War. So the pros of the French and Indian War versus the cons of the French and Indian War. The pros were the British gained power and land. So you can see this is kind of a timeline down here on the bottom. You have from 1763 to 1774, and you can see there's several things that happen that throughout those 11 years. There's taxes that are passed. There's rebellions that happen. There's problems that the colonies do not like that the British are enforcing, and that's it was kind of a 10 to 12 year gap there where Americans were really fed up with what the British were doing to them. So it takes about 10 years for the American Revolution to really get started. So we're on the cusp of that. We're right where that's fixing to begin. So the cons of the French and Indian War was that the war cost a lot of money. The British had to send soldiers to enforce the Proclamation of 1763, again, not settling west of the Appalachian Mountains, and problems arose with the Native Americans. So as they tried to settle in the land that they had just gained, Native Americans were again allied with the French early on, and now the British control all that area. So the Native Americans were not happy with what they were having to deal with. All right, some vocabulary for this week are resolution is an official expression of opinion by a group. Effigy is a mocking figure representing an unpopular individual. So you can think of an effigy today kind of like a meme. A meme represents somebody or something that's unpopular and usually makes fun of something. So that's kind of what an effigy was. Then a boycott is to refuse to buy items in order to show disapproval. So basically, not supporting something because you don't agree with what they do, that's a boycott. And repeal is to cancel an act of law, so to take back whatever they set into law. All right, so the Sugar Act of 1764. So this is one of the first taxes that the British imposed on the American colonists. So as Parliament, which remember, Parliament is the government that is how the government is ran in Britain. So Parliament was in charge of passing the laws. Parliament passed the Sugar Act because they hoped colonists would pay tax instead of smuggling. So the British wanted to make all the money off of America, and they didn't want Americans to become rich. So Americans began smuggling goods, which means importing and exporting goods, selling of goods illegally. And Parliament hoped that they would rather pay the tax than run the risk of smuggling. The Sugar Act lowered the tax on molasses, and officers could seize smuggled goods. Colonists felt the law violated their rights of trial by jury and right to privacy in their home. So the colonists believed that they had to have representation in Parliament. So colonists were upset that these men hundreds of miles away, or thousands of miles away, across a whole ocean, were controlling the colony. And they didn't even have anybody to represent what they wanted in that Parliament. So it kind of becomes a theme of what they're going to go through. Taxation without representation. Okay, so the Stamp Act was in 1765. So this is the next one that happens. So the Sugar Act worked. It kind of deterred the colonists for a little while, but it wasn't enough. They felt like they still needed to do more. So the Stamp Act taxed almost all printed materials. Now you got to remember, there wasn't internet, obviously. So everything when it came to books or writing or newspapers or anything like that was all printed. And so there was a tax on it now. So colonists believed only colonial assemblies could tax them. So now they did not like the fact that Parliament was taxing them on their own goods right there. And they said only the colonies should be receiving money from the things that we buy and sell. So the colonists were outraged and protested. 9 delegates from the colonies sent a statement to Parliament. They boycotted British goods, so they stopped buying British goods. After the colonists boycotted, the British lost so much money, they had to repeal the Stamp Act. So once the colonies stopped doing that, stopped buying their goods, it was too much. The British lost too much money. They had to take the Stamp Act back. The British also passed the Declaratory Act, stating it had the right to tax the colonies. So not only are they taxing the colonies, but the more that the colonies fight against them, the more they're like, oh, yeah, we have the right. We have the right to tax you. So they passed another law that said we have the right to tax the colonies, which in hindsight, that was basically the wrong thing to do. It only angered the colonists. So the Townshend Acts, all right? So this was the next one. It happened in 1767. These acts taxed imported goods such as glass, tea, and paper. These taxes had to be paid before the good would enter the colonies. This was different than the other taxes. Okay, so before the goods would even be delivered or dropped off, they had to pay the taxes ahead of time. And they said, we won't even ship them to you until you pay the taxes, which was different. Before, it was when you purchased them once they were already off the ships. So the colonists boycotted and protested the acts and British goods. Okay. All right. So this is our last slide, but what you're seeing here is what you're kind of going to get for the next few weeks is the British keep piling things on top of the colonists, and the colonists keep refusing and keep refusing. Well, this goes on for 10 years of the British thinking they have control of the colonists, and the colonists, no, they don't. And eventually this is going to lead to the American Revolution, where America finally stands up to the bully that was the British. Okay, they were kept thinking they had control of them, and they did not. All right, so make sure you take good notes. Make sure you copy down what I have on these slides. It's really important. You guys should know this by now. And if you have any questions, shoot me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, have a great week.